everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I am so excited to share this book, Change the Story of Your Health, using shamanic and Jungian techniques for healing. And we have Dr. Carl Greer here sharing this wonderful piece of work. So I'll tell you what I did. So welcome, Carl.
Nice to be here, CJ.
So in honor of you, before I actually, right after finishing this book, which was about an hour ago, to an hour and a half ago, I and before that I was doing a shamanic journey that you recommend in your book, and the shamanic journey involved going to what the shamans called the upper world, and talking to your guides and understanding if I don't change my health habits, what kind of life would I have? I said 10, 15, 20 years from now, and I got a series of things about self-care and caring for self versus others. I got immunity, like watching, because my immune system could be revved up, and I have to look at maybe diet changes and otherwise to look at that. And then I got workout, and you should be doing stairs every day because I have a hip stability issue that actually translates to not being grounded in earth, ideally. So in honor of you, right before right before this interview, I ran up and down the steps, Mike. Okay, once a week, I'm getting it done today. Carl with this book has motivated me to do steps.
That's kind of what it's about. The idea is you can do all these practices, but unless you bring them into your daily life, they may not really affect you in the ways that you like.
Yeah, that shamanic journey was one of the most powerful journeys. And I've done a lot of shamanic practices, but I really love how you came up with that idea of saying, if if I continue the habits as I have them as of today, what's going to happen? And I was going to lose my balance and stability and functionality because if your core and grounding to earth is not grounded appropriately, then it's like a building that has a foundation that's not quite right. All the floors above it have a rippling effect. So I think that's kind of a huge thing. Finding these things now in my 50s.
Well, it is, and if you get insights as in the journey, as you well know, I suggest what do you need to give up in order to have it be different. What do you need to bring in order to have it be different? And if you do those things, what would the picture be? How would you look 10, 15 years, whatever time period you picked? And so the idea of needing to get rid of things sometimes and bringing them in something else to replace that is an important shamanic idea.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I've been contemplating that as I've been thinking about my son graduating. I was talking to a previous person who was saying in the Toltec wisdom there was this idea of recapitulation, where you let go of things in order to bring forth things. And even when you have an invocation that you talk about in the beginning, where you're invoking the spirits to come with you on a healing journey, you invoke people and it's your spirit guides, and it has that flair. Can you tell me a little bit about the background and why letting go and bringing in?
Well, there's two related ideas that I think we're talking about. One in terms of bringing in and letting go. It's kind of the Chinese medicine idea, acupuncture. Sometimes you need more energy in a place or less energy, and then you're rebalancing. And energetic work involves that. You may have something that is no longer serving you, and if you can identify what that is and with your intent, let it go, and then bring in something that would replace it. Again, you these other realms to inform you as to what that would be, as you did on your journey. That could be. And in terms of what you said about bringing in the spirits and the energies before you do this kind of work, this is the idea of working in sacred space. The idea that all these energies coexist with us and around us, but if we can, with our intent, bring in whatever traditional, from your tradition, allies might be, or spirit helpers could be, that's a good way to set up the work before you start. And I have found just by doing that, it can have almost neurological changes. You move from being guided by the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, where you're more relaxed, and you tend to have benefits to your immune system just by making that intentful opening of sacred space.
I love how you tied that to one of my goals. Increasing my having better immunological response. So tell me about the four directions, or actually, I guess there's six different directions. And when you're invoking and creating a sacred space, what do each of those directions mean?
In You might have, in a lot of mystical traditions, they talk about correspondences,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, the correspondence might be between a gemstone and a sound and a
Mm-hmm.
plant and an animal, and they, at an energetic level, they have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So in different traditions, they might attribute a certain characteristic to each of the directions, the earth and above.
Mm-hmm.
In the tradition that I work with the most, it's the Inca shaman tradition.
Mm-hmm.
South, we call in the energy of the anaconda, and the message is in that direction, and the work is, how can you move beyond some of the wounds that you have in this lifetime
Mm.
and shed our past the way the serpent sheds its skin. Uh,
Mm.
the notion is, if you have your past living differently uh, than it used to in the present, you're freer to make different decisions.
Mm.
The thing that you did, the upper world journey, is if you can have the future living in you differently, and you connecting to a better future, that also influences the decisions in the present.
Mm.
That's just a shamanic
Yeah, so
idea.
and is that the south, the anaconda snake, is that the south direction?
That's the south. Then
Okay.
the west, the jaguar, and the jaguar in Indian mythology has the ability to go between the worlds. In the
Oh.
little, be in the trees, it can be on the ground, it can be in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But in the shamanic world, it can go between life and death, the conscious and unconscious.
Mm.
That to help us come to peace with our uh, genetic inheritance and maybe our reincarnational inheritance,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to move beyond our fears of this life and the life to come.
Mm-hmm.
Be
Mm-hmm.
impeccable, be really present in every moment.
Mm-hmm.
North, it's the direction of the uh, hummingbird, where you attempt to learn how to be still in the midst of your busyness and busy in the midst of your stillness, which is kind of an
Mm.
issue.
Wait, say that again. Busy. Wait, say that again.
When you're being very silent, what are you doing? Very quiet. So it's an appropriate activity in the midst of the silence,
Mm-hmm.
and it's those lessons, but also the lessons of the fact that we are all spirit people that have come from a lineage and belong to a lineage of people who were before us and who will come after us. So that's the lessons of that
Mm-hmm.
direction.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the east, it's the direction in my tradition of the eagle and the condor. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a place of perspective, but it's also a place of new beginnings. You
Mm.
put all this is like a medicine wheel I'm talking about. So you put all these things together back into your everyday life. So what changes can you make now as a result of these spiritual experiences that you had?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Then you earth and you recognize that we are just part of the natural world, and you give thanks for that chance to be part of that natural world. And in my own invocation, I ask, how can I be a good steward for you, Mother Earth, Pachamama in the Andean Kero Quechua
Mm-hmm.
language.
Mm-hmm.
And then we honor the sky spirits and the great spirit, the unknowable. And we
Mm-hmm.
give my invocation just for being able to be here one more day to do this work, the
Mm-hmm.
honoring of alive in this place. So that
Mm-hmm.
would be this particular invocation, but others can call it saints or their guardian angels or their spirit helpers. But the idea is that we're recognizing that we are part of a continuum, that
Mm-hmm.
before the Big Bang, there was nothing, pure potential. Uh, that pure potential surrounds us now. And the spirit work, the energy work, believes that by our intent in interacting with these invisible realms, we can cause things to happen in this reality that otherwise wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the work is to do that through honoring, appreciation, and with our intent to cause things, in the case of my book, things of a healing nature to happen that might not have happened had we not done the work.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because so I told you about my upper world journey. I also did a lower world journey. That's why it took me so long to read the book, because I was doing everything while I was reading the book. And the lower world journey, what was interesting is it had flavors of the jaguar, I think, where it didn't have, I mean, in that idea where I'd gone in and no, this is a lower world journey that I did connecting to Earth. And when I went to Earth and I went to the lower world, I got the message that I have a back pain on my right side and that it's been with me for a really long time. And a corresponding, like if you were to literally draw an arrow through the back of my right side to the front of my ovaries, it's like there is a connection between these two places. And I said, "What is that? You know what? Can you tell me about?" For whatever reason, I asked the Earth what I needed to know, and it said this back pain and the front part was just a result of a prior life where I had made a decision to. Oh no, this was it was a decision. Sorry, I'm getting this confused with work I did 2 days ago, but it was about interestingly psychology where I didn't have proper attachment for whatever reason. My parents did the best that they can, but I didn't have the proper grounding and foundational support that I needed, which showed up as this kind of skewed hips, which is what I found out when I did the upper journey. But it was interesting to see how all those pieces kind of fit together and how powerful from just doing that journey. I was kind of shocked because I've never used this kind of work to dig into my health. And really, I can see how it would change the story of my health by just doing that work. And going, well, I guess energetically I'm not connected appropriately because I don't feel the foundational support. And that was like a huge insight for me to just even have that. Um,
Mm.
so it's interesting how those directions play out in the journey, right? So there is a prior, a past, I don't know, like back to my childhood, and I had discovered that, and it's like this is what I have to let go of or give myself. In this case, is let go of the. For me, it was like let go of the frustration and anger of not having that proper attachment. It's like let it go. That's a pass.
Mm.
And going back to ancestors in North, right? It's like my ancestors, my mom, my dad, like they didn't give me a proper attachment. But then, okay, let that be the past. How can I actually move to the future in the you talk about the eagle and the condor of new beginnings and say, okay, how can I use that to say, okay, well, you can create that own foundation. Your parents didn't even have to create that in the first place.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
your responsibility. It's your foundation. So you create it. And so it was just that new beginnings, and asking the spirits to help me make that connection. So it's really nice I like the idea of the circle because it helps me kind of conceptualize how to think
Yes,
about stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
And also, I think you're recognizing that each of us has many parts, some of which we're conscious of and some we're not. And I suggest some of the parts we can work with from the standpoint of healing are simply certainly our symptoms, but also something I call our inner healer. That we all
Mm.
have a healing mechanism, and if we think of that as a person, as something, a man or a woman that we can interact with and ask, "What message do you have for me about this pain in my back?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what can you tell me?" Uh, and you might even ask, "What do I need to give up to have it be different? What do I need to gain? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do for you?" The note
Mm-hmm.
TJ is reciprocity, and with these energies, if you think of them as having an aliveness and a ability to convey information, we want to kind of honor them for working with us, and ask, "What can we do to help you? What can we do to serve you?"
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of, I think, the reciprocity that's, I think, important in healing.
Yeah, it's interesting because so you talk about talking to the spirit of water or fire or earth or what am I missing? Wind, and
Yes.
use tapping into those as as your guides to actually go in and ask, what is it that I need to know? And I was kind of shocked because I also have hives that I've been getting, which is a immunological response, right? Which makes sense, right? Which is my system is getting too hot and it's trying to dispel this toxins out of my body, and what I got was the importance of water and drinking
Mm.
water. And it's interesting because when you look at the five elements in Chinese medicine, if you have too much fire, they say complement it with water. That's how you, going back to what you said earlier, that's how you balance everything, is to balance everything. Um, so, anyways, I found all of those guides interesting. When and because you're a Jungian psychologist, who do you think we're really talking to when we're talking to the wind and the water? Are they who is it that we're talking to?
Well, that's a big metaphysical question. A
Yeah.
lot of rational scientific minds would say that we're primitive in our views if we think that animistic ideas really are real,
Mm-hmm.
and that nature has a wisdom and an intelligence. And I happen to disagree with that because my worldview is that we all came from this place I call the quiet in my writing before creation,
Mm-hmm.
from which Big Bang happened, and then our world and all the universes uh, are formed and are continually formed. And in this formation, there were energies, some we see and some we don't, but they're
Mm.
all emanations from this one place of pure potential.
Mm.
That's the idea of the from the one came the many, but then the
Mm.
many has within it the essence of the one. And so, uh, water and fire and trees and grass and nature and animals all have a certain uh, essence from that from which they came.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And we can relate to that essence. Uh, and it's an energetic relationship, it's a vibrational relationship. And even if uh, all we're doing is projecting things from our own psyche onto it, that is interesting and informing in and of itself. I think it's more
Mm-hmm.
than that. I think that nature is observing us, CJ, just as we are. Now, the nature of the observation and the meanings it makes from it are interesting. In other words, a big boulder that's observing you, uh, from our human standpoint, it's an interesting question. What would that boulder be thinking? And maybe we can never really uncover that, but the fact that it's alive, that it has uh, subatomic particles that are moving and whirling
Mm-hmm.
and forth, that's we know that for sure. And we
Mm-hmm.
know that observations at the subatomic level can affect those those movements. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
no sure is how they affect at the macro level, but some suggest that as above, so below. We don't quite understand those processes. But the point of all this is that I believe that these realms have an intelligence, uh, maybe different than ours, but an awareness that we can communicate with and get information and energy to make changes.
Mm. What I like about that is that so many different things. Is that in some ways water is so simple, because there's all these kind of complicated archetypes, like if you go to tarot cards, which is one aspect of archetypes. You have the priestess and you have the joker. You have like, whatever number of 144 different versions of
Mhm.
archetypes. Or I think maybe there's 10. I don't know the tarot. So apologies for all the tarot advocates out of there who are a little bit too pissed off. But anyways, you have the tarot and they're so complex, right? But water is just so simple. So in some ways talking to water, there's somewhat of a purity about just tuning into water and just that aspect. And I like the idea from what I'm gathering of you're saying is that we were one that got split into the many. So we all also are water, and we can tune into that from a logical standpoint, right? We have water.
Mostly water.
Yeah.
Uh, and we have electrochemical reactions inside of us that's fire. And
Right.
we have a lot of earth substances and minerals within us. Uh, and we have oxygen and nitrogen and, elements of air in us. So we consist of all of that. And you look at fire,
Right.
fire, there's wood that came from photosynthesis, the sun, and water, uh, and earth and the plants. And through burning, it transforms uh, from the wood to smoke that goes back into the earth that comes down. So everything, we're talking about processes of transformation. And when we can look at our health as part of these larger pictures, it helps us relativize it. It maybe gives us some freedom of action we wouldn't have had if we get so identified with, our
Mm-hmm.
pain or uh, or or dying,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
uh, may be
Yeah.
for a person.
Yeah, so actually focusing on the elements and the system therein so that you can actually draw from that wisdom. And I want to, there was something very interesting that you have in this book. There's a section where you talk about, well, that it's the first time, I don't know why, but maybe that I thought about this, but you've talked about, like, well, sometimes people get payoffs for being ill. Like, they get sympathy or they get, so because I thought, well, why would someone want to be ill? I don't like when I'm feeling pain and I have illness, but what are some of the reasons? Because you've worked with, patients who are working on their health. What are some of the reasons that people have for pain, wanting to have pain and illness?
Um, at the conscious level, people might say what you said. Hey, why would I want to be sick? But at the unconscious level, let's say that you have uh, responsibilities that are heavy for you, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
you do them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one way to do them is to be sick.
Mm.
So you get out of some things. Or let's say that you're a person who's a caretaker and people, you take care of them, but there's nobody really taking care of you. Well, one way to
Mm-hmm.
get taken care of is to get sick. Uh,
Mm.
Strategies, the benefits are really at the end of the day worse than the cost because some of the illnesses have their own consequences. Now, I'm not saying that we can call in our illnesses. I'm not saying that kind of is like we create them for spiritual purposes. I'm not saying that we don't, but that's not really kind of my thrust. But I'm just saying, if you look at some of your illnesses, I think it makes sense as one of the exercises in my book to see, are you getting any payoffs by
Mm-hmm.
illness?
Well,
Now, even if say you are, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be able to move beyond the illness, but it gives you another perspective, another way of looking at it, and these self questions at the left brain level, where we're kind of thinking with our rational mind, is a good starting place to see what is the story of your health right now as you see
mm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can go another level. What are the themes around it? For example, you may say, I come from a family where the men all die by the time they're 60. I probably will too. But that's
Mm.
kind of that's interesting that I believe affects you because if everything's connected to everything else, these beliefs affect our thoughts, affect our emotions, affect our endocrine system, affect our cardiovascular system, and so on and so forth. So to find out more than we normally think about what those beliefs are and what we think our story of their health is as it relates to our exercise, our eating and drinking, our dealing with aging and menopause, or handling a chronic condition or an acute condition. I think to have a starting point is important to help us decide where we want to get to. What would be the the new story we like to write.
Mm-hmm. And I think another thing that and a lot of spiritual folks talk about this is that, the symptoms are really a way for you to they're a call out, like, hey, you got an issue, and it's probably not just a body issue. There's probably something that your spirit is calling you. So I like that idea as well.
Yeah, if you believe that we have a physical existence and a psychological existence, and then a spiritual existence, and then a pure energetic existence, all of which are interacting with each other, an imbalance at one of those levels would influence the other. For example, if you're physically very sick, you can have psychological consequences from that,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have energetic being done. You can also it can affect your spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, if you're kind of in a spiritual low point or energetically being affected from external or internal things, it can affect your psychology, which that in turn can affect your physical well-being. So they're
Mm-hmm.
all connected, as you said.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something you talked about, your health story. So I took a bunch of notes. I have not quite figured out my health story. And so I figured that maybe as listeners, folks can actually, and if you'd be willing to indulge me, is coach me on my health story or walk me through a process of a shamanic process. And then through almost the asking of the questions, of which I've already pre-thought about a lot of these things, it could help. And I encourage listeners to go, oh, wait, let me pause the YouTube and think, what's my answer to that? Would
Mhm.
you mind guiding me through a process that would help me tune into my inner wisdom and I have these many notes on my health story. Um,
Mm,
I need to have some distillation.
yes, yes.
Um,
Okay, so I asked kind of an open-ended question in that chapter about the health story. You
mhm.
know, what CJ is the story of your health? And then I have some guided things which we can talk about. But if I were just say, what's the story of your health? What would you say?
My existing story or the story that I'd like it to be?
Existing.
Existing. I am working on I'm right now. I had a wake up call. I had started with plantar fasciitis, then went to my back and throwing out my back to the point that I couldn't walk for about actually probably plantar fasciitis for 6 months and my back for like a month where I couldn't barely walk or move. And I thought, well, my body is telling me that something is not right. And so I thought I got to dig into, there's something about my foundational support that's not quite right. So I'm going to dig into it. And so over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, I've been just focusing like, okay, is it a spinal issue? Is it a massage issue? What is the issue? And have found out that it's my hips, it's my spine, and a car accident that I had in the past. It's my hips from actually having a C-section. When those are all the Western explanations for what had happened, and I've been working on my health, I think indirectly through working on my spiritual issues for a while. So this was like still, even if you do work on your spiritual issues, I think that there are oftentimes body issues still that remain, right?
Sure.
So that's my health history. I'm focusing on preventative healthcare, and I'm now working with this great program in Seattle where with Lee Hood, who started Ari Vel, which is this program that he started Amgen, which is looking at your DNA and looking at if you can actually look at someone. I'm in my 50s. If I can look at my 50s and say what medicines am I what genetics do I have in store for me, and how can I do preventative care now to eat better, sleep better, drink more water, whatever. So this is purely a Western look at it. So I've been doing all the Western and kind of traditional medicine stuff to get to a better health. So that's so long, but that's my health story.
So in response to what's your health story, you're thinking about structural instability, your back.
Hmm.
Was it plantar fasciitis? Did you say you
Yes,
had?
plantar fasciitis.
Oh, okay. So that's what you think about.
Yep.
All right. So let's say, how about your eating and drinking habits?
Uh,
You eat,
I eat poorly, but although I've been now that I have a health coach, I'm eating a lot better. And I don't really drink any alcohol. I mean, on maybe like once a year. I mean, that's how little.
How about your flexibility, stamina, strength, balance?
I see. Okay, so stamina, I've got a lot of energy. I have a lot of flexibility because I do yoga a lot, like probably once or twice a week. Balance, I'm actually pretty good with balance because of doing yoga, and I do this workout that's it's called TRX, where you're floating in three-dimensional space. So it really focuses on balancing your body and proprioceptic balance. So I think I'm good.
How about your dealing with aging and menopause and body image and so forth?
Um, I'm good on the I'm good on the menopause is like I was kind of torturing myself, and I realized that interesting. I interviewed someone on hormones. Oftentimes, when you have menopausal scenarios, sometimes it's a result of your nutrition, and so I was able to drag myself out of menopause by really focusing on my diet like 8, 10 years ago, and then actually just a month ago, I'm on my regular cycle just from eating better.
Mm.
But I'm okay with it. I think about it from a shamanic standpoint, which is that you have all this energy that comes in and like trying to create a baby, and now is the time where my kids are graduating from college. I don't want to create a baby so I can get all that energy back, which results in hot flashes. But like that was the best way for me to
Mm.
reframe hot flashes. It's like, oh, it's my power. I'm getting it back. So. So I'm okay with menopause. My gotcha is aging because I thought, oh, I really don't like the wrinkles and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not okay. I'm not okay necessarily with my face aging. I don't want my body to age, but then I want to go to a place of accepting, but then in your book you talk about a gentleman who wanted to get eye surgery and for his bags on the top of his eyes, which I definitely have. And and you thought, don't punish yourself for wanting to do that. And I thought, okay, well, I kind of do. Like, I feel bad that I have a different attitude and I do Botox and fillers and all sorts of stuff like that to kind of. And I thought, am I obsessed with this or is that just okay? So that's one area of, I don't know, question mark. The rest of the
Mhm.
stuff I'm fine. I mean, I know I'm going to age. I hope to age. Uh, I hope to be walking, moving, and functioning, and then one day just drop dead. And and I'm fine with that. I just want to be moving until the end. So I guess the
Sure.
part that I'm not fine with is not having mobility. That would be really hard for me, I think. And being in the quiet and no movements phase, that would be hard. And I'm working on those pieces because that may be my future. So I don't want to, you know, I want to be okay with and accept it.
Sure, sure. And then how about you have any chronic conditions or acute things besides the back and the
And
plantar
the
fasciitis?
hives, yeah, and the hives. Those are the only things. I don't take any medicines or anything. I'm pretty good aside from that. And I get found out from my Airval program with Lee Hood that I have high cholesterol, so that's not good.
And then circling back, you talked a couple times about the lack of stability, structural support.
Hmm.
Are there any metaphors in your life where you're not getting support that are interacting with these things you've been talking about?
Um, you know what? I think that it's probably more of an energetic thing. I mean, part of it was the thing I realized just from reading your book about, the attachment and having a grounding to earth and mother. I think that that's been something I've worked on for a long time. Um, did I answer your question? I think so. Yeah, so I think that that's so I actually did some energetic work where someone actually like let go of some energy that was bound up in my first chakra, but it was done in a way that felt a little bit violation of my body, and I actually have, I think, fixed some of that, but I mean it wasn't done in an appropriate boundaried way. This body work, so um, yeah, so I think all those things probably affect my foundation, family of origin, not being properly grounded in the sense of I had a really great dad. I had a mom who was not your typical mom. She was great in other ways. And then I had a piece of body work that was done in an inappropriate, violative kind of way. But then, and also a lot of beautiful things happen too. So all these things are kind of mixed.
All right, so with this as a starting point, if you were to envision what house story would you like to have in all these various areas? What would you like to have compared to what you have? If any, it sounds like in some areas you're pretty satisfied.
Yeah. Well, now after your questioning, I think I want a better foundation, grounding, and relationship with Earth, I think. Um,
It looked like in your everyday life a better foundation, a better grounding. What would that look like?
more self love, I think. I'm more willing to give love to other people than I am actually to give love for myself. So that's something like that. Um, I want to have vitality and energy and exuberance. I think that the thing that you mentioned about, and I really want to watch my language because I, I think saying I'm old, I can't do that because I'm old, is not necessarily a helpful dialogue to actually be putting yourself, because it's basically hypnotizing yourself to say, I'm old, which is my excuse for being limited. Therefore, I'm limited. You just you start embodying and believing what the general hypnotic speak of this around us is kind of like that. So I don't want to be subject to that. I want to say, hey, you know what, my energy, I want to be as vibrant and full of energy and light as I possibly can, um, because it will just feel good to do that. So I'd like to have, a vibrant, energetic body. I'd like to have a clear mind with a clear memory and able to think clearly. I'd like to have a spirit that leads me and not necessarily, and a spirit and heart that leads me, and kind of an open, awakened heart would be nice. I know these are big things, right? But that would be I guess those would be my overall health story that I would like. And to have I'd like to have a family, continue honoring family as it changes over time. Because, I'm no longer going to be like the mom driving and doing all these other things. It will change, but have a changing relationship to family so that I can actually focus on myself now that I've spent, 20, probably I'll spend about 20 years focusing on my kids, and I want to get some of that energy back to focus on myself and my husband.
Well, two things. You said many interesting things, but two things that I want to just comment on. One, the importance of the language we use
Yes.
and we tell each other, because words have power, and words and beliefs can influence, as I believe, all these things. So the words we choose to think about ourselves and say to ourselves are important. And so that's just one observation. The other observation is a lot of your new house story is more almost at the energetic level. I want to be vibrant, I want to be vital, and so forth. So that's interesting. It's not saying I don't want to have the pain in my back. I don't want to. I'm sure that's part of it, but I want to. It's more of an energetic thing.
That is very interesting.
So you'd be starting from, if you continue to do the practices in the book, these are all ways to jog a person to kind of see what is, to see where they like to
Mm-hmm.
be, then start to ask the question, well, if I'm here and I like to be here, why aren't I here? Why aren't I here?
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's because we have some reason, often unconscious, to not change.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the expanded awareness practices I talk about are ways to uncover some of those so that we can deal with them differently, just as you did on that upper world journey. That's
Mm-hmm.
one way. But these other journeys that I suggest people go on are ways to get energy and information to allow us in our daily life to make changes to get to the place where you want to be more vibrant. Now, you've
Mm-hmm.
already obviously done some work with the book.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Another prescription could be, when you think about it, spending time in nature, just
Mm-hmm.
be with nature, and as you're dreaming and seeing yourself in your new health story with this vibrancy. Uh, uh, just have that image and that intent, and you're just lying underneath a tree, or you're lying on the ground, and
Mm.
it kind of help manifest that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
these journeys, going to the journeys, there's lots of places that I talk about: the lower world journey, the upper world journey, this place before creation. I talk about a journey to death. The place. What needs. This is a kind of a paradoxical thing. What needs to die in our lives in order for us to live more fully while we're here?
I have yet to do that one. I want to do that one next, which is
Yeah,
huge, right?
it is. So it's all ways to allow us in our health, self-healing work to have more things at our command to help us change than we had before we did the exercises, than we did the book. And my
Mm-hmm.
belief is that in a world of increasing specialization and many, many experts that sometimes give confusing information, uh, we don't need to turn ourselves completely over to the other to heal us. We have a lot of capacity to do it ourselves, but it takes some time and energy and intent. But I think the results, at least through the people that I've worked with and for myself, can be very powerful. Doesn't
Mm.
mean Western doctors. It doesn't mean you don't, use this work as a complement to those things. But it does mean that it can be very powerful, in my belief, uh, as we're talking right now.
Mm-hmm. So I want to switch over to something that you talk about in your book about prostate cancer that you have yourself, and I guess I would like to hear your health story when you created your own health story, given after the diagnosis, before the diagnosis. Um, what's just and also so that people can hear different health stories. Mine was very energetic. I don't know if yours is very energetic, but tell me a little bit about your health story, and yeah, so let's start there. Your health story.
Sure. Well, I'll be next week. I'll be 77. So
Oh, happy birthday, early birthday.
I've had a nice life, but during that life, I've had my share of breaks and sprains and whatnot, and some cardiovascular issues, which uh, my family has had.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's, I think, maybe genetic, but part of it's lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my journey work has been around that constriction. And at the energetic level, I've seen ways where I've been constricted, just as some of my arteries have been. And
Mm.
so I do, visualizations around that, journey work around that, dialoguing around that with the constrictions. Uh, I had, maybe 10 years ago, AFib, uh, atrial fibrillation, and I did a lot of energetic work to try to, master that. But I ended up having an ablation, which is a procedure to deal with the AFib, which was successful. So I've had various
Mm-hmm.
things like
Mm-hmm.
that in an artery and a kidney. But the prostate cancer was discovered about a year and a half ago when I was uh, considering an experimental approach for an enlarged prostate to shrink it, where they block the arteries and then it reduces the blood flow to the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
part of the protocol for that procedure. They did some tests that discovered my prostate cancer, and then I had biopsies for it, and I'm on a watchful waiting protocol where I have biopsies every year, and I watch my PSA. But I'm also doing energetic work. I'm spending
Mm-hmm.
that I'm doing visualizations, I'm doing clearing work, I'm dialoguing with it to see what I need to do vis-a-vis the cancer.
Mm.
So in the middle of that, as we speak right now, and continuing to do my own personal work along the lines of that which is in the book. And being in nature is a big part of it.
Mm.
It's an important part for me, as well as the journey work, as well as just taking time out of our busyness to, let down a little bit. What I said earlier about going from the sympathetic nervous system, where you're more in the fight or flight mode, to the parasympathetic, it changes your brain waves. Slow down. It's like instead of being in beta, you go to alpha, theta,
Mm.
and that has been proven to affect in a positive way certain neurotransmitters, endocrine system, and
Mm-hmm.
your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
All being in nature can affect your immune system. Being around water with negative ions can affect it. Being around pine trees can affect it in positive ways.
So your health story is using the healing power of nature and energy to improve your health.
Yes,
is that how I'm trying to figure out how to summarize what your health story is? And
doing the things that thinking about it, not obsessing about it, but reflecting on what is what I'd like to do differently, and that also and is involved. I eat differently than I used to. I mean, I grew
mm-hmm.
up in a Midwestern family where the grandmothers like to feed the grandkids, and I ate you know pies
Right,
and
cheese
meat.
whiz on
Well,
hot dogs. Yeah.
they were gravies and meats and
Yes.
potatoes and
Yes.
rolls and sticky buns, and
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Frankly.
I love that food, but it's not necessarily the healthiest, particularly as I've aged and I exercise less. So I eat differently. I eat more
Mm-hmm.
vegetables, the protocols of eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. I try to move in that direction. Uh, I've never been a huge drinker, but at the margin, I drink probably less alcohol than I used to. I exercise more religiously than I used to, even though I've
Mm-hmm.
been martial arts for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I try to have some contemplative time, some downtime where I'm working, to kind of get still uh, more intentionally. So I try to incorporate these things into my life in the midst of everything else that I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to necessarily carve out, huge, big chunks of time. I mean, I can be waiting in an elevator and kind of, breathe and kind of come down, or at a stop.
You're the person I want to be next to in an elevator.
Yeah, yeah, right,
What
great.
I
So,
what I love about your general approach to life is the East meets West, right? And you did the Jungian psychology, and then you're doing this, Eastern or otherworldly kind of approach. I mean, it's interesting. So, how do you combine? And we have 3 more minutes, I know. So I know this is a big question, but how have you combined Eastern and West? Because so you've gone to the doctors, right? And it sounds like you've had procedures or thought about procedures, and then you're doing this energetic healing. What have you seen has been the results of your energetic healing? Do you know? And what's the optimal combination that you found for yourself of Eastern and Western approaches?
well, I certainly believe in the Western approaches. I mean, I have a lot of good doctor friends who happen to believe in these approaches as well.
Yeah.
So it's marriage. Uh, and there's been times I've been had diagnosed with blockages. I've done some energetic work, and the blockages have cleared. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's because of what I did. I don't know if they made a false, assessment of what it was. All I know is the before and after, and,
Right.
and never. This is the kind of work that you can't have a real good double-blind studies and prove it.
Right.
Uh, do it. I've had enough anecdotal stories from myself and others of things changing in positive, sometimes big ways, that I keep doing it. And it's very low cost as long as you're not keeping yourself away from other uh, procedures that might also help you. I think it makes sense because it has so many other side benefits to it,
Right.
and anybody can I think anybody can learn to do it. But as you're saying, you have to spend some time. You have to be willing to do it and accept the fact that change can happen at the margin. I mean, just little changes can lead to big changes, just like on my eating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like overnight that I stopped liking a big steak, because I still like a big steak, but I may have it less frequently and have a little less of it.
Right.
Uh, so you can make changes and you can play with it, uh, and it's in some ways it's fun, and you can get more joy. Your goal of more vitality and energy is achievable for, I think, everybody. More, whatever you have a little bit more of it. Even if you're dying, and many people my age, older, they are dying of something, and they're
Mm-hmm.
aware of it. And people say, well, can you get health in the midst of your last 2 or 3 years, your last 2 or 3 months? I think you can have more vitality by doing some of these things in some cases, not not every, than if you don't.
Hmm.
Uh, Some people that have had, terminal cancer that have found great uh, pleasure in their last days spending time in their garden or being in a
Hmm. Hmm.
park, running water. It's very, very
Yeah,
healing.
you wouldn't know unless you'll never know, right? Because you're doing it, and as long as you're, I get
True.
that. If, yeah, on the margin, you're feeling better than, and you don't know what you would have felt without doing it, but you're feeling good, then, amen to that.
You got you got it, CJ. Yeah.
I love it. So thank you so much. We've been talking to Dr. Carl Greer about his book, Change the Story of Your Health. Thank you so much for putting this beautiful piece of work and sharing so much of your own story. Thank you so much. We've been listening to the Fired Up with CJ show. Tell us about your website too, or we'll put your website on the screen too on YouTube, so you can find Carl and his website. Can you tell us quickly your website?
CarlGreer.com.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Carl
Uh,
carlgreer.com. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.